The night my sister disappeared, my family had prepared to buy half the county. By morning, she was found on a stranger's farm. And the land we were about to destroy belonged to the woman who saved her. People assume wealth feels like freedom. It doesn't. It feels like an obligation. I grew up in glass towers and marble foyers, in rooms where decisions moved markets and men spoke in numbers instead of sentences. My father, Jonathan Buttland, built our real estate empire from scratch. By the time I was old enough to understand what property meant, 20% of the state's skyline carried our name. Legacy wasn't discussed in our house. It was expected. I studied finance and architecture because that's what firstborn sons do. I sat in meetings before I was legally old enough to sign contracts. I learned how to evaluate land before I learned what I wanted from my own life. I was good at it. That was the problem. The only person who ever asked if I was happy was my younger sister, Aliona. She refused to fit the Buttland mold. She painted murals on her walls, dyed her hair improbable colors, disappeared into the mountains on weekends. She said I thought too much. She wasn't wrong. I didn't like her boyfriend from the beginning. He asked about zoning regulations before he asked about her interests. He studied our properties the way some men study art. Not with admiration, with calculation. When a land acquisition proposal crossed my desk months later, I recognized his name immediately. Large-scale development. Amusement park. Aggressive buyouts. Included in the targeted area. Farmland on the outskirts of Abuja. I almost signed it. The numbers were clean. Profitable. Strategic. Then I noticed the back-channel routing. He hadn't gone through our family office. He'd gone around it. That gave me pause. The next day, Aliona didn't come home. Panic does strange things to powerful people. My father called in favors. My mother stopped speaking entirely. I kept calling her boyfriend's phone until it went straight to silence. When the house phone rang that night, my hands were steady. My chest was not. A calm woman's voice said, "Your daughter is safe. She's with us." Two women had found her injured during a hike. They treated her and called her doctor. The next morning, when Aliona walked through our front doors, bruised, shaken, alive, something inside me recalibrated. She introduced the women who helped her. Crystal and her mother. They stood in our foyer like they'd stepped in from another world. No designer labels. No rehearsed composure. Just steady eyes and dirt still faintly caught beneath their nails. When I thanked Crystal, she looked uncomfortable with the attention. When I complimented her mother's quick thinking, Crystal nearly choked on her water. It was the first unscripted moment I'd had all week. I watched their old truck disappear down our driveway and felt something I didn't have a framework for. Curiosity. The land proposal resurfaced days later. This time I read it more carefully. The farmland targeted for acquisition included theirs. I drove out myself. My father wasn't pleased. "We don't negotiate with sentiment," he said when I told him I wanted to reassess the parcel. "It's not sentiment," I replied. "It's due diligence." He looked at me for a long moment. "Be careful you don't confuse the two." The farmhouse surprised me. It wasn't impressive in scale, but it had presence. Vines wrapped the exterior like the house had chosen to coexist with the earth rather than dominate it. The porch sagged slightly under hanging plants and wind chimes. It felt lived in. Crystal opened the door. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked wary. Inside, her mother poured me something called coffee beet. It sounded questionable. It tasted surprisingly good. I explained the proposal. Crystal didn't argue emotionally. She explained soil quality, crop cycles, supply contracts, workforce impact. Her voice didn't shake. It sharpened. Then she mentioned her experimental crop, a hybrid she'd been developing quietly for a year. Coffee and cocoa. I asked to see it. We walked the perimeter of her fields while she talked. Not at me. With conviction. She spoke about flavor balance, drought resistance, sustainable yield. She had spreadsheets in her head. Contingency plans I hadn't expected. I'd met founders before, tech startups, hospitality ventures, logistics firms. Most of them loved their pitch more than their product. Crystal loved the product. When she finished, she looked at me like she expected dismissal. Instead, I asked for her projections. That night, I reviewed them alone in my office. They weren't perfect. Margins were tight. Market education would be expensive. There was no guarantee consumers would accept something that didn't fit neatly into coffee or chocolate. And there was another complication. If I invested, I'd be stepping outside real estate. Outside my father's structure. Outside the lane carved for me since birth. For the first time, the risk felt personal. I didn't sleep much. The next board meeting was tense. My father presented the amusement park acquisition as inevitable growth. Clean expansion. When my turn came, I recommended withdrawing from that specific parcel. On what grounds? He asked evenly. Community stability. Agricultural value. Long-term optics. You're protecting a farm, he said. I'm protecting leverage, I replied. He studied me carefully. Be certain, he said quietly, that you're not building your future around someone else's dream. That stayed with me, because he wasn't entirely wrong. When I returned to the farm, I was still uncertain. Crystal laid out revised projections. Conservative estimates this time. Phased expansion. Pilot launch before scaling. She wasn't reckless. She was disciplined. I realized then that I wasn't investing in a romance or an idea. I was investing in a founder. I'll halt the acquisition, I said, and I'll fund a pilot. Her relief was visible, but controlled. Then she did something neither of us expected. She threw her arms around me. I did not see it coming, her full weight was on me. We both lost our balance. When we hit the ground, she looked horrified. The stain on my cloth told the true story. I laughed. It felt unfamiliar, the moment. So uncalculated. I am so sorry, she said. I will get you cleaned up, she offered. How about dinner? I said. That's the condition. She narrowed her eyes. You're negotiating. I laughed. Always. She smiled. That was the beginning. Dinner was supposed to be simple. Not so much. She didn't dress to kill. I doubt she ever bothers about stuff like that. She wore simple clothes, wore a little nice fragrance, a little rub on the cheek, hair washed and allowed to be no extra sauce. While she was hugely confident, one could tell that this Ms. Adams had more important things to think about than presentation. At the restaurant, people noticed me. They always did. No one noticed her, and I was pleased about that. The gossip mills won't bother her. Halfway through the meal, she interrupted my explanation of distribution channels. Do you ever stop negotiating? She asked. I paused. With investors? Rarely. With people? She clarified. I didn't have an answer. She leaned back, studying me, not impressed, not intimidated. Assessing. You don't have to pitch yourself to me, she said. No one had ever said that. Not in that way. Weeks later, I attended a gala my father insisted I show up to. Black suits, polished laughter, cocktails, jewelries and perfumes wrapped around women who knew exactly how to stand beside powerful men without blocking the cameras. People who understood positioning and knew who exactly to position themselves beside. One of them, someone I had run into a few times in these events, congratulated me on the agricultural pivot. It's charming, she said. Very rustic of you. Charming? Rustic? I excused myself early. That information wasn't even in the news and she already had the details. People do keep tabs out here. On the drive home, I realized something unsettling. Not one woman in that room had ever challenged me. Crystal did it before dessert on our first date. It rained 3 days straight. The kind of rain that turned the fields into mirrors. That evening after work, I sent her a message. Hey, how was your day? Bloody, I guess? I had meant the weather. She didn't reply. I told myself she was busy. And then I asked myself if she misread my use of bloody. You see that thing when you meet someone you really like, and you start questioning things you say to them, that is where I was. I wanted to text her to explain, but she hadn't voiced any sort of confusion. So what would that make me? A mansplainer? The next day, in between meetings, I texted again. Hey, You okay? Nothing. I was becoming worried. I called after work. No answer. The following day I lost my place mid-sentence during a presentation. A partner noticed. You're distracted, he said. I'm fine. I wasn't. And no one else but me could understand it. By evening I drove out to the farm without calling first. Her mother answered the door. She's in the lab, she said gently. Been there most of the time. The makeshift lab was in the lower level of the farmhouse. Concrete floors, metal shelving, glass beakers catching dim light. Papers everywhere. Soil samples. Roasting charts. Microscopic slides. She stood over a table, sleeves rolled, hair tied tighter than usual. She didn't look up when I entered. Relief hit first. Then concern. Crystal, I said. She adjusted something under the microscope, but did not say anything. I walked closer to her. You've been ignoring me. I've been working, she said, not looking up. For 3 days? I asked. She didn't answer. I stepped closer. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes. Have you slept at all? I asked. I'm fine. You weren't answering your phone. Silence. I softened my tone. I was worried. That made her pause. Finally, she looked at me. There was something guarded there. Not anger. Distance. You don't have to be, she said quietly. What does that mean? She hesitated. Then, as if forcing herself through embarrassment. On Tuesday, when it rained, I came to see you, she said. I blinked. You did. You said you eat between 1 and 2. Across from your office. My chest tightened. I thought maybe, she gave a small, self-conscious laugh. It was impulsive, just impulsive. I don't do impulsive. Anyway, I did. She went on before I could interrupt. I parked the truck at the restaurant's parking lot. Realized I didn't have an umbrella. By the time I reached the entrance, I looked like a drenched chicken. Despite myself, I almost smiled when she said that. She didn't. And then I saw you, she said. The pieces began assembling. You were at a table with her. And then, even more softly, she said, you were with her. I exhaled slowly. My ex. She's leaving the country. She wanted to say goodbye. Crystal's jaw tightened. She kissed you. It was a peck on the cheek. What are you telling me? She asked, eyes sharp now. That people you care about casually peck their exes? I don't have another woman in my life, I said plainly. She held my gaze, searching for negotiation. There wasn't any. She looked away first. It leaves a hole, she said quietly. When you think you might matter to someone else, and then you realize you don't. That landed harder than anything she'd said. You matter, I replied. She shook her head slightly. I felt stupid, she admitted. Standing there soaked. Thinking I could surprise you. I decided it was better to focus on work. Not because she didn't care. Because she cared too much. I stepped closer. You should have walked in. And interrupted? She asked, defensive reflex returning. Yes. Silence stretched between us. Rain tapped faintly against the small basement windows high up. Her eyes lifted. I was worried, I said. I haven't slept properly in 3 days because I thought something had happened to you. Her eyes lifted. The guard cracked. Just slightly. I reached out, slowly, and brushed a streak of dried soil from her wrist. She didn't pull away. I don't negotiate feelings, I said quietly. I just don't always recognize them fast enough. Her breath shifted. You scared me, she admitted. Thankfully, I'm here now, I countered gently. A faint, reluctant smile touched her mouth. That's fair. The tension eased, not disappeared, but softened. She stepped closer this time. If you ever plan to let someone kiss your cheek again, she said, voice low but steady, I'd prefer a warning. I'll schedule it in my calendar, I said, smiling. She rolled her eyes. Then something changed in the air. No dramatic swell. No orchestral crescendo. Just proximity. I touched her face, not urgently, not possessively. Carefully, as if confirming she was real. She leaned in first. The kiss wasn't heat. It was relief. Certain. But I could not get enough. Nothing needed negotiating. We were not turning back. The pilot crop wasn't an overnight triumph. The first harvest was smaller than projected. The roasting process took months to refine. Early tastings produced mixed reactions. Some loved it, some didn't understand it. Crystal adjusted without ego, reformulated, retested, documented everything. I handled distribution agreements and brand positioning, but she controlled the science. The intellectual property remained hers. My father watched from a distance. He didn't interfere, but he didn't endorse it either. The first regional launch sold out modestly, not explosively, respectably. Then a specialty cafe featured it. Then an agricultural innovation journal wrote about sustainable hybridization. Momentum grew, slowly, then steadily. It never became a fairy tale. It became a business. Dating her was less dramatic than people imagine. We argued about supply chain logistics. We debated pricing ethics. She accused me of overstructuring. I accused her of overtrusting. We were both right. She didn't care about the Buttland name. She cared about whether I showed up when I said I would. That required more courage than any boardroom. When I proposed, it wasn't in a ballroom or beneath chandeliers. It was under the grapevine arch her grandfather planted. Because I understood by then, legacy isn't always vertical. Sometimes it's rooted. Kafoka, her name for the hybrid, found its place in the market. Not as a replacement for coffee or chocolate, but as its own category. We expanded carefully, partnered with local farmers, built infrastructure without stripping land. My father eventually visited the farm. He walked the fields in silence. "This is slower than real estate," he said finally. "Yes," I replied. He nodded once. "Slower isn't weakness," he said. "It's patience." That was his version of approval. Before Crystal, I built structures that touched the sky. After Crystal, I learned to build things that touched the ground. One required control. The other required trust. The day she saved my sister forced me to reconsider what mattered. Choosing her and the farm wasn't a rebellion. It was a decision. And for the first time in my life, it was entirely my own.